Hello, thank you for having us here. My name is Bree Hensold with Agency Landscape and Planning, and today you'll be hearing about the Jersey City open space element from me as well as my teammates Rhiannon Sinclair and Abby Jamil. So as we dive into sharing the plan, we want to first give you a quick introduction to the team that created it. Then we'll share the vision, the big pieces that tie together and really set a tone for parks and open space and recreation in Jersey City in the future. And then we'll dive into how that vision gets implemented, how it becomes a series of goals and recommendations that can be implemented over time, both by the city, but then in concert with a number of partners. So starting with a quick round of introductions, I introduced the agency team. We are leading landscape architecture and planning for this project, really pulling all the pieces together. We're working as well with NV5, who's been focused on connectivity and thinking about how to make an improved bike and pedestrian system that connects parks and open space and people. We're also joined by Stokes, who's supported engagement during this process in a really nimble way, considering the pandemic, and has helped us to do some outreach to improve participation. And then lastly, by Barry Dunn, who's really focused on recreation. So concrete ideas that could help to make recreation services and programs work better for the community. The open space element is being completed in tandem with the land use element. These two pieces are really complementary and integrated through this process. Together with a lot of other plans that the city has been working on, they add up to the complete picture of the future of Jersey City within a broader master planning effort. I think the biggest foundational element of this plan that we need to start with is a huge thank you to all those who have helped to shape it, both members of the community as well as a really long list of engaged stakeholders who showed up even during a pandemic to various parks to engage with the plan, give their ideas, found us online and offered lots of different thoughts about what could make the parks and recreation and open space system work better. And then a lot of collaboration within the city and across lots of partners. Lots of different departments contributed, data, ideas, and ground truthing of the plan. We were able to work with a great technical advisory council also to really kind of root this plan within the processes that are already happening within the city. And we were driven and informed by a council and constituency representatives group that helped connect us to the really important stewards of the parks and open space system in Jersey City. Throughout the plan, because of the pandemic, there were lots of different creative opportunities that we tried to use to get the word out and to increase engagement. As we went through, we continued to check and see who we were hearing from and who might be presently underrepresented in giving their voice to shape the plan. And so we tried to respond in different ways to increase participation. One of those was to create and mail out a postcard specifically to engaging in the open space element. It was mailed to neighborhoods with a higher proportion of underrepresented communities, and it was also multilingual. So the hope is, and we saw some increases, that would help to get broader, more equitable participation in the plan. All of that input, as well as a lot of analysis and looking at the data on the ground, has led to a vision, a comprehensive vision for the open space system in Jersey City. What we heard overall is that people want to see it as a really well-connected, beloved and functioning and resilient place. So that means that, that this plan is going to guide the city as they work, because you're a very dense community that's really built out and has a lot of things happening within every square inch of the community. We really want to focus and enhance every square inch that you have, get the most out of it for parks, recreation, and community enjoyment. We also really want to strengthen connections. And we know that as a city is growing, connectivity becomes more important than ever. So you'll see some recommendations about how to really increase access to parks and connect people safely throughout the city. And then finally, increasingly important, the parks and open space system helps Jersey City invest in a resilient future. So this is not just about the resilience of the open space system, also facilities, also neighborhoods, and has a lot of broader benefits. Within each of those kind of vision themes, you'll see that we have a variety of goals as well as key recommendations. Those are the actions and the aspirations that will drive and hold the plan together. And that's really what we want to be sharing with you today. When all of those pieces work together, we see that that vision becomes a really great place to live, no matter what age you are, no matter what neighborhood you live in. It focuses on connecting across major barriers. And we see that that vision is really grounded in those 3 community-driven themes and 34 goals. All of those elements were developed really closely with the TAC, the Technical Advisory Committee, and shared and vetted with the community in the Vision Plan workshop. So we hope that this adds up to a really great opportunities and improvements that knit into the land use plan and that really reinforce what the community wants to see within their system. And now I'll pass it to my colleague, Abby Jamil.
Hello, thanks so much, Bree. I am Abby Jamil with Agency Landscape and Planning, and here to talk to you about our first section, Enhancing Every Square Inch. So this first theme is meant to describe a philosophy about being strategic and creative about what is possible both on and within the city's land, amenities, and facilities. It encourages thinking about what is possible and pushes spaces to be multifunctional. This is the media section of the recommendations, containing 20 goals and 61 recommendations. As there are many detailed goals within this section, we are only going to focus on a few. The few that we focus on, we feel cover the general aspects of the recommendations. Those goals that we will dig into a little bit deeper are bolded here, and they include addressing gaps in access through both acquiring new land and investing in existing facilities, designing parks to be welcoming spaces, reflecting contemporary trends and tastes in open spaces and amenities, and expanding access to programs specifically for low-income households. So diving into our first one. Addressing gaps through new land and improved facilities. Our opening goal is to address the gaps that currently exist in parks, amenities, and open spaces in 2 ways. The first way is for the city to acquire new land to create these services. The map on the right uses white spaces with black dotted lines to outline areas of the city that are outside of a 10-minute walk to a park. It is recommended that these neighborhoods and others that suffer from an unequal access to park space be prioritized for investment. And the idea of acquiring new land in parks originated from community members. In our community survey, just over half of our respondents felt that this strategy would help them visit parks and open spaces more often. The second way to address gaps in access is to invest or reinvest in what already exists. So both our data collection effort and community survey responses led us to conclude that people are not always close to the amenities that they desire, or that the parks, open spaces, and facilities that are nearest to them are in need of improvements, and that both of these aspects dissuade them from visiting what may be close by. So the strategy is to improve what already exists, should be prioritized over land acquisition, which we know is much more complicated and often a much more time-consuming process. So tending to and improving what already exists is both financially more efficient and shows a commitment to our existing communities. The second goal is to design parks and open spaces to be flexible, welcoming, and accessible. This includes meeting or exceeding universal accessibility standards like wheelchair ramps and widening pathways to increasing restrooms and water access. The graphic on the right shows what this might look like in legacy parks. It includes celebrating and investing in the history of these legacy parks, while also accommodating new flexible uses like grilling and electrical hookups. And we can take inspiration from cities like New York City, whose NYC Parks Without Borders program has sought to specifically address the moment where parks meet streets and sidewalks. It has invested in removing fences and gates and redesigned entryways and exits to be much more obvious and much more inviting. These efforts indicate that these spaces are meant for all members of the community. The next goal is to reflect the tastes and desires of Jersey City residents and visitors, while also paying attention to national trends. For example, there has been a national shift away from baseball-specific fields towards flexible fields that can accommodate sports like cricket, soccer, and disc golf. The recommendation for this goal includes engaging nearby business owners and residents during the planning of parks. This will help ensure that nearby open spaces feel personal and reflect the neighborhood that they are within. Recommendations also include programming that represents a multitude of identities, cultures, and age groups. Many flexible physical spaces already exist within Jersey City that could host such programs. With some imagination, vacant land, underutilized infrastructure land, or public schoolyards provide these such opportunities. The final goal that we will highlight within this theme is to expand city programs for low-income households. It is understood that a park and recreation system as complex as Jersey City's requires a great deal of resources, be they financial or staff. Offering additional free or low-cost programming may be difficult within this current structure. So in order to achieve this goal, we offer a few recommendations. The first is to compare Jersey City to similar cities to understand if there is an alternative fee structure that may work better. The second is to create, strengthen, and formalize partnerships with organizations that have both the physical spaces and the resources to host programs. Partnerships with mission-aligned organizations can also fill current gaps in program offerings. Additionally, the city should continue to champion lower cost and non-traditional ways to offer programming, such as mobile classrooms and pop-up plazas. These examples have really taken off due to COVID-19, and many families find that they just generally better suit their needs. So I will now pass it over to Rhiannon, who will dig into our next two remaining themes.
Thank you, Abby. Hello, everyone. Rhiannon Sinclair, excited to share more about strength and connectivity. So this is our second element theme, underlying the system of parks, programs, and facilities that Abby has outlined within Enhance Every Square Inch are the sidewalks, streets, trails, and transit networks that connect people to these destinations. The plan outlines 7 goals and 22 recommendations to achieve a safe, accessible, and equitable network of connections for bikes and pedestrians. So let's dig in. The goals within this theme focus on ways to strengthen connections by building off of the plans that came before us. We also think critically about investing in the Greenway system and prioritizing investments to east-west links between the Greenway that exists. Today, I'm going to share 4 goals that reinforce the desire to connect all Jersey City residents safely and efficiently. There are 16 corridors and intersections in Jersey City with high crash volumes. Every one of these corridors is within a few hundred feet of a park, community facility, or school. To better protect bicyclists and pedestrians from motorized traffic, we need to follow through with the Jersey City Bike Master Plan and the Pedestrian Enhancement Plan by introducing separated bike lanes and safe crossings, starting with those high crash corridors. When we think about designing streets for all ages and abilities, we can summarize much of what the Jersey City community shared from workshops and the survey into one word: safety. The data we pulled from the plan process says the same thing. Challenged corridors, conflicts, limited transit access, lighting, and unsafe sidewalks all deter people of all ages from visiting the city's parks and facilities. This goal, to design our streets for the youngest residents, reinforces that universal accessibility is core to citywide connectivity, starting with the city's most vulnerable populations and those living in communities with the lowest incomes and with limited access to city resources. Here, as shown in this example, investments can include new lighting that illuminate sidewalks over streets, mid-block crossings and signalized crossings close to schools, libraries, and parks, and clearly lined roadways to slow traffic and enhance visibility for drivers and pedestrians alike. Working with NV5, we feel strongly that a well-designed street is an important first step to creating safe connections between residents and their favorite destinations. To fully connect residents to their favorite destinations, a concerted effort is already underway to expand transit stations into transportation hubs for bike sharing, wayfinding for visitors, and safer pedestrian and bike infrastructure, which is also known as micromobility hubs. The plan proposes opportunities to expand the mobility hub network by connecting transit to parks, libraries, and other city facilities, and prioritize these new hubs in environmental justice neighborhoods. The open space element plan is not a plan for the greenways, but it can help to frame design considerations for our greenways so that our trails and connections better reflect our needs for safe, beautiful, and functional trails and crossings. First, we need to confirm a greenway network that connects with the city's riverfronts north and south, as well as on-road east and west. We also need to identify or develop identity standards for the city's expanding greenway system. So as the greenway system is implemented, it's important for the city to deploy a comprehensive wayfinding system and clear identity to help tell a story about the city, its history, and its diverse community. In Indianapolis, as you can see in the images to the right, the Cultural Trail connects some of the city's least connected neighborhoods via a shared path that is separated from cars. The Cultural Trail uses path materials, signage, and plantings to reinforce a consistent identity and make some of Indianapolis's most challenged intersections safe for bicycles and pedestrians. Our last theme is invest in a resilient future. So here we think critically about our right-of-ways, facilities, and open spaces and how they can contribute to healthier and more resilient communities. Within this theme of the open space element, there are 7 goals and 26 recommendations. I will walk through 4 of the 7 goals to highlight how the city can set a baseline for climate resilience and adaptation in order to protect the city's most valued assets, its people, and its places. When we think about expanding green infrastructure and open spaces, we look to the survey and past workshops. In the survey and past workshops, many of you shared the challenges of flooding during Hurricane Sandy, and you reinforced that floods, storms, and hotter than average days will become more frequent. The city has already done a lot to understand the impacts of flooding, and the MUA is working hard to upgrade water systems for major storm events. Still, we'd like to find ways that parks can be part of a strengthened green infrastructure framework while still serving the needs of recreation for our residents. This includes converting parks and open spaces into more multifunctional spaces that continue to support recreation needs and provide stormwater storage during rain events. There are also many ways to adapt what we already have to ensure city facilities and open spaces address community health and wellness, act as cooling centers on hot days, and reduce the effects of urban heat island and flooding. Working together with the Climate Action Plan, the city's buildings can serve as resilience hubs that also contribute to lowered climate emissions and increased awareness of the city's role in combating global warming. Lastly, the city needs to lead the way to expand our tree canopy. Shade trees along roads and in parks can reduce the heat island effect in neighborhoods by up to 5 degrees. An incremental plan to maximize tree coverage could have a multitude of benefits for Jersey City today, as well as far into our future. I'm now going to turn it over to Bree, who is going to share more about how the city can prioritize these goals and recommendations.
Thank you, Abby and Ree. So you've heard a lot about a variety of different ideas that really add up to that complete vision about kind of investing and enhancing every space, making sure that the activities that are provided meet the needs of the community, about creating a connected system, safer biking trails, walkability, and about a resilient system, one that can endure amidst different changing weather and the coastal conditions. So it's a lot of different ideas, and we know that all of these things won't happen at once, but that in many ways, a lot of the different recommendations are also reinforcing. And so we've given some thought to how implementation might sequence and how you can start and over time kind of build out the plan so that after a kind of 10 or 20-year spectrum that we might be looking ahead, you've realized your vision. So in the short term, we're looking at being able to get started on about half of the recommendations. In the medium term, tackling about 35 additional, and in the long term, completing the plan with the final few. You can see that throughout the entire duration of implementation, there are a number of recommendations that are ongoing that could happen at any moment or be pushed out a little bit further, depending on capacity, opportunity, and community need at that point. So thinking about what might want to happen in the short term, here's a few examples. We know, especially from working with the TAC and the community, that there are a lot of projects that are already underway. A lot of these have to do with some things that are really important to neighborhoods, to those who use the systems, and their basic improvements to parks, open spaces, and rights of way. Oftentimes, those are some of the most critical things to address community need early. And they can be done because they've already been teed up, discussed, and funded through other processes. But these projects themselves really do rely on continued relationships and support, even if they can get started earlier. A great example of this is that in the survey, we heard about the need to scale up the composting program. So it's a program that already has been piloted, tried, has community support, and in the short term could be implemented by being enhanced and expanded. In the medium term, we're looking at some bigger projects, things that might take a little bit longer to get ready. They're often funded by capital investments or longer term partnerships. So it takes more work, more time to get prepared to implement these medium term projects. They need to be put within the budget or a fund raised from multiple sources, and you need to align different partners behind them to make sure that they can succeed, be implemented, and stewarded. These are often going to involve more resource-intensive projects or larger scale investments in the open space system. Some additional detailed design and planning and community engagement would also be necessary to implement some of these. So an example here of something that might fall into this medium category is something that's been implemented in Harlem, the Grown Impact Farm, and this could be something that you can see is more of a medium-term project, has some capital improvements, and needs to line up multiple partners to make it happen. And looking ahead to the long term, here we're thinking about projects that require advocacy bigger thinking, additional study, and long-term community investment. So a lot of this would be some of the more comprehensive or multifaceted capital improvements. You can see here how this project that engages the waterfront really hits on a lot of different pieces: water access, connectivity, and programming. But it also means a lot of collaboration and coordination needed with neighbors, with other agencies to think about working in the water's edge. And so ideas like living shorelines in waterfront parks, like in the Morris Canal Basin, really would require a little bit longer lead time, a little bit more work to get under the ground. It doesn't mean that you wait and you don't do anything now. It just means that this might not be implemented until later. And then there's a lot of opportunities for these ongoing projects that can be creatively implemented at various times when opportunities or enthusiasm and momentum shows up. So these could be active projects that happen at various timescales. A retrofit to existing parks and facilities to host more events is a great example. You already have the platform of those places, so it's really just about thinking about layering on programming or additional infrastructure. And these could happen anytime according to community need. So we've shown you a little bit of a picture of how to think about implementation. And how all those different steps will add up to the vision, to Jersey City's vision for a connected, accessible, and resilient parks and open space system. And we look forward to seeing the plan implemented in the coming years. Thank you.